Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to provide another update to the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to keep this video somewhat short and sweet because I don't really think there's a whole lot to add from the video I did a couple of days ago called Dubious Speculation. Generally speaking, my thought process for Bitcoin right now is that it likely has a date with the bull market support band, which is the 20-week SMA and 21-week EMA in September. There is always a chance it goes there sooner than September, but the reason I think it's more likely to go there in September is because if you go over to the monthly returns page for Bitcoin on the ITC website, you'll notice that all prior post-halving years for Bitcoin have had a green July and August, right? 2013, 2017, 2021 stands to reason. There's a decent probability that August is green as well. But as we know, there's no such thing as a sure thing. But if August does stay green, then what you'll notice is that 2021, 2017, and 2013 Septembers were all red. So I'm thinking that Bitcoin has a date with the 20-week SMA and or 21-week EMA. But if I had to guess the timing of that date, I would guess sometime in September. It's not impossible for it to go there in August, but there's plenty of times where you have like Bitcoin stalls out in August. Like look at 2020 where it kind of stalls out in August and then it just stays just elevated enough and then doesn't drop to the bull market support band until September, right? This weekly candle was the last day of August in 2020. If you go to the daily time frame on that in if we go back and look at 2020, you can see that August, you can see that September 1st and then September 2nd, we saw the Bitcoin drop to the bull market support band kind of early September, right? Early September. And Bitcoin just kind of stalled out here, right? I mean, it stalled out a little bit, didn't really go anywhere. And that's the reason I think that altcoins will likely get a correction on their USD pairs in September is because I think Bitcoin is going to visit that bull market support band in September. And I've had some people reach out and be like, well, what about rate cuts, right? Like there's a rate cut in September. So why would Bitcoin drop? It could actually be due to a combination of things, right? But one of the easiest narratives to sort of follow is that markets price things in before they actually happen. And while it's likely they're going to cut rates in September, it's also likely that the bond market is going to have a negative reaction to that. We had the PPI data come in not too long ago, and it showed that inflation upstream is actually coming in a little bit hotter than expected. And so when the Fed cuts, more than likely in September, there's a really good chance that the 10-year yield will likely go up, right? There's a good chance the 10-year yield will likely rally. And it shouldn't be that surprising because, again, there's no such thing as a sure thing, but the last time the Fed cut in last September, right? In September of last year, that basically marked the low for the 10-year yield. And we haven't gone below the 10-year yield, where the 10-year yield was when the Fed cut last September since they did it. So there's a chance here that the 10-year yield, wherever the 10-year yield is on the day the Fed cuts in September, that could mark a low for the 10-year yield. The problem with that is if the 10-year yield starts to go back up, which is my base case, if it starts to go back up to where it was in October of 2023, which is what I think is going to happen, that's going to put it back at 5%. And that move by the 10-year yield could be responsible for Bitcoin getting that pullback potentially back to the bull market support band in September. Now, you might wonder, does that mean that Bitcoin can't put in a new cycle high in August, right? Like, is that completely out of the question? I wouldn't say it is. I mean, if you look at 2017, there was a little bit of a correction by Bitcoin in August, right? There's a little bit of a correction in August, about mid-August, right? Like right here, Bitcoin stalled out. And then it still managed to put in a new cycle high in late August before then getting that drop to the bull market support band in September. But there's so many examples where like you get that drop in September to the bull market support band. It happened in 2017. It also happened right here on that wick in 2013. And then also even in 2021, you know, you'll see that Bitcoin kind of stalled out right here in late August. And then in the last week of August and early September, it had one move back up. And then came the correction to the 20-week SMA. So I wouldn't completely count that out, like that idea out. There's still a chance that happens. The interesting reason that I looked at 2020 is because the valuation that Bitcoin stalled out at in 2020 before it began the correction to the 20-week SMA in September stalled out at around 12,470. And then this level that Bitcoin just hit was literally just like a 10x, like almost an exact replica. And the other similarities are that you had, you know, a capitulation by Bitcoin in Q1, just like we had a capitulation by Bitcoin over here in Q1. So that was kind of why I was looking at some of those similarities, and why it makes sense to see Bitcoin back at its 20-week SMA in September. And if Bitcoin does that, while it would only be another 6% drop or so for Bitcoin, you know, or even 5%, depending on how long it takes to happen, it would likely be a much larger drop for the altcoin market. It would probably be like a 20 to 30% drop for Ethereum, and probably like a 30 to 40 to 50% drop for altcoins. So I still think that you know, Bitcoin, as long as Bitcoin holds on above the 20-week SMA, then you likely won't see that larger correction by altcoins. But whenever Bitcoin does make that move to the 20-week SMA, that's when altcoins should get a larger drop. And my guess is that altcoins continue to stay strong against Bitcoin through the end of August, right? I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to put necessarily in a new high, but I don't think they're going to get a larger drop on their Bitcoin pairs until the month of September. But we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. And again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. We go in a lot more depth. We talk a lot about more things. Make sure you guys check that out. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.